The Hate U Give. This is the latest film from George Tillman Jr. It stars Amanda Stenberg, and it covers police brutality, it covers diversity, it covers a bunch of stuff in the social justice warrior wheelhouse that, as you would expect from this channel, I gotta cover it. This is my conservative take, and we're starting right now.
I ain't named you Star by accident.
Hi, my name is Kyle, and if you are unfamiliar with the way I do my reviews, click on the link above and in the description, a quick summary of how I do it. As always, I will put a spoiler warning if that applies. So let's begin. So The Hate U Give is a coming-of-age story about a girl named Star, played by Amanda Stenberg, and she has a duality of sorts, okay? Because she grew up in an urban area, predominantly black and ethnic. Her parents do not want her to go to the school district there, and they move her to a school called Williamson, which is a predominantly white private school. Her best friends Haley and Maya are white, and her boyfriend Chris is also white. He's very popular. And so we have a situation where on one side she has her friends who are black that she grew up with against her new friends, including her boyfriend, who are white and of a different diversity altogether and just outlook on life. And so for the category of story, I'm gonna give this film a 7. Because even though some of the conflict was on the nose, it was still the strength of this film. I mean, everywhere you look, there's conflict. And you can hear that a lot in the rest of this review. But it was really well done, and it gets you thinking. And that, you gotta give it high marks. And I think a 7 is a solid score there. So for the category of emotional impact, I'm gonna have to say, even though this movie has solid conflict, and I just said it before, that was the strength of the film, it is because it gets you to think. But in terms of emotion, it doesn't kind of fly because, this is kind of like on the nose, and you know what the director's trying to do, so you don't want to feel like, I get it, right? And also, there's a part that I'm gonna mention in the conservative take section, the spoiler section, as to why I just can't get on board. But 6 is still pretty solid, and a 6 is where I'm going to go for emotional impact. So for the category of intangibles, I would say outside of the acting and maybe the soundtrack, that's pretty much what this movie has going for it. But again, I just couldn't get past some of the on-the-nose type of stuff with the narrative they're trying to push forth. So I think a 5 is where I'm going to go with this, but I guess I could be persuaded to go higher, but for now it's going to be a 5. For the category of watchability, I'd have to say it's going to be a 6 because it does deserve at least a second viewing. Because no matter what side of the fence you're on, it's going to be opposite of that. There's going to be a point that's going to be different than what you're thinking. And so for that, a second viewing is definitely warranted. But a 6 is about as much as I can go with this one because I wouldn't see it more than a couple times. And so for my overall rating, this is the weighted average I give against it. I'm going to give it a 5. I know it seems kind of low, but there's reasons for that I think I can justify. It just wasn't something to me that was something that I really, really, really enjoyed. Now, it wasn't because the subject matter was tough or anything like that. It was just because I just couldn't get past some of the stuff in terms of what was being forced out and some of the omissions the story was not going with. There's some points that they really could have nailed home that wouldn't have compromised the integrity of what they're trying to say, but at least give a more accurate depiction of what happened. And they missed that one aspect of it that I'm going to talk about in my spoiler section that I just couldn't look past. It's not a bad movie, but to me, it's just that one thing I just can't get past. So I'm going to give it a 5. Okay, now, so I'm going to get into some serious spoilers here, but I got to talk about this because, I kind of alluded to some things before. Okay, so number one, this story is about, again, Star and her father, who is a Black Panther or was a Black Panther. And he was a father who really understood, from his perspective, what it was for the kids to understand their world around them, how they are being perceived, and how they should behave going forward publicly, okay? So he's a very positive father in that mindset. He was in prison for some time. I think he took some time for somebody else, but he wasn't a perfect dad. However, you had him and his brother, which is played by the actor Common, who was a police officer. And so those two have a conflict there. There's a conflict between Star and her friends Haley and Maya, particularly Haley, because Haley is depicted as a pretentious, racist, or at least at the worst case, racially insensitive person, against her other side of her family who and her friends who are, just living that thug lifestyle and want her to do things like go to a party and beat somebody up. So what this film does a very good job of is showing how it's difficult for a young lady like Star, growing up in a society that tells you about virtue signaling and identity politics, knowing or feeling that on one side of the table you have a group of people that are victims versus another side of the table of people who are, the elite, right? Or the privileged. You hear the term white privilege in this movie. And I'm like, okay, so what do you expect for a young person to feel when they're told that you're a victim, you're perpetually whatever, and to be reinforced by the people that you have on your side who are being thuggish and having you come over to parties to beat people up. But then you have the other side of it, you have people who are being racially insensitive on things, even though there was a remark about fried chicken was totally legitimate in terms of what they had for lunch that day. But I submit that there is a lot of that cultural insensitivity, but that's different than outright racism. And so it's also different than white privilege, because I would bring up the argument that it is a situation of being a permanent underclass, identifying yourself with a political party that's kept this particular group of people in this situation that they've been in. If you're on this channel, you know where I'm coming from on this. And so that was not talked about. But yet it's like we are victims and these people are coming at us and we had to do something about it, particularly as it involves around police brutality, which is what this movie centers around. You have a situation where a police officer pulls them over, Khalil, which is her friend, a black friend, and they're in the car together. Star grew up with a father who told her how to handle the police to make sure yes sir, no sir, hands on dashboard, whatever. Khalil didn't have that kind of upbringing. He was clowning around, joking, whatever, questioning the police officer, whatever, trying to be hard. And so when the cop goes to his car to run the tags, he's out of the car anyway because the cop had him out. And so he's playing around, goofs off into the car with Star, pulls out a hairbrush, brings it up above his head, and gets shot and get killed. Never once in this film do they talk about the fact that he shouldn't have done that he was not following instructions. Now, was the cop being a little bit ridiculous in this? Yes, he was. He was being a little bit obnoxious, and the way he was being portrayed prior to was pretty obnoxious. Now, the story does go into some of his background, how the police officer's family was victimized and so forth. And so they alluded to the fact that he was under a lot of pressure and stress. It was at night and so forth. So they did cover that. Her uncle, which I guess her father's brother, is also a police officer. And he actually told her, he said, look, if you're a police officer and you're at night, you see two people in the car, you don't know what's going on. You don't know if you're being accosted, if you're being kidnapped, if you've been fighting. Are you guys against me as a cop? And so quick movements can get you killed. And I did a video that I'll leave a link below in the notes where I interviewed a police officer, and he describes that very thing and how that can be a problem and how it really is about education from the police as well as the community. And so lashing out at the police over something like that and saying that it was an injustice, well, I beg to differ. Was it an injustice? That was my big thing, which is why I can't get over that part of it. They never even once mentioned that. Had they mentioned at least one time as a possibility, then I would say, okay. Even the uncle was like, look, if he was white, I wouldn't have shot him. I would have told him to raise your hands. Come on, man. Seriously? I don't buy that for 1 second, right? If a white guy is pulling out a hairbrush out of his car and raises over his head, I guarantee he's probably going to get shot just the same. So anyway, but that being said, all that's the big negative. But overall, it gets you thinking. And I have to say, there is a problem in the community. And a lot of it's just with communication and the relationship with the police officers and the community. And I get the fact you want to protest and so forth, but let's give some context, right? Let's give some context. In the movie, the officers did get off. So I thought that was appropriate. And I get the outrage, but I think from a narrative standpoint, they should at least hit that, because right now they're being disingenuous and being a little bit dishonest to the audience. Okay, now for my final take, I'm going to basically say this film is an 11 out of 20, which gives it 2.5 stars out of 4. Now, I have one more thing to say. I don't want to miss this, so I'm going to drop the spoiler warning right below here, and that's this. The white people in her circle. You had Haley and Maya and the rest of their crew, all right? And you had Chris, her boyfriend, okay? Chris, her boyfriend, really was the conservative here. Okay, he was the one who saw her for who she was, didn't look at her as a black girl or whatever. He mentioned that many, many times, and followed it up with action. Put himself in the line of danger during when the riots happened at the end, or the rally happened. He was there for her, and he was there for her. Now, let's contrast that against her other friends, particularly Haley, okay? Where she was basically using it, say, the death of Khalil, saying, you know what, hey, let's do this because we can skip class. Or let's do this because this is cool. Or I'm down, trying to do all this stuff, shucking and jiving, trying to placate to the black community, okay? All right, they put themselves over this pedestal, looking down their noses at black folks. But yet that wasn't identified either, and I couldn't expect the movie to do that, but just note that. Look for that kind of stuff. So let's leave that at that. Anyway, that's my review of the movie. What do you think? Because the most important thing is, what do you think? Comment below, let me know. What's your thoughts on my last statement there about the whole conservative? Let me know. I know I'm probably gonna get some heat on that one, but that's just my thoughts. And so if you like the content on this channel where we take culture, TV, and movies and filter it right, please hit that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. And as always, please check out some videos that I have right here.